What's going on, Disney fans? It's Dan here to bring you the full history of Snow White costumes in Disney parks. She's had over 30 different variations throughout the years, appearing in everything from stage shows to musicals and parades. So get ready, let's head on down to the Evolution Mines so that we can dig up some Snow White. Hi ho, hi ho, hi ho. It's Disney evolutions I make. Do 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 do. Hi ho, hi ho, hi ho. So here's a fun fact that you might not be aware of. Every Disney princess that's ever been animated is in some way a reflection of the popular fashion from the time that her film was made. Women's fashion in the 1930s had evolved in several ways, including the introduction of the bias cut, a new technique in cutting fabric diagonally to give it more stretch and form, which allowed fabrics to drape more elegantly over the female body. We moved away from the flapper movement of the 20s and into a more simple silhouette. The lady's waistline finally returned, and with influences like the popular 1932 mystery film Letty Linton, it led women to abandon the flat shoulder designs in favor of a Joan Crawford dramatic sculpted puff sleeve, helping to bring even more focus to the womanly hourglass figure. The modern fashion stylings of the 1930s coupled perfectly with the 16th century timeline of Snow White, which was reflected in her animated costume. The fitted bodice with a waistline, the dramatic puff sleeves, a flowing elegant skirt, all perfectly echoed the evolution in current fashion. So pay close attention as we work our way through all of the Snow White history and see if you can find the echoes of 1930s fashion in this 16th century princess. And really keep an eye on these puff sleeves, because when it comes to costume designers, that's where I guess they have the most fun with Snow White costumes, is weird puff sleeves. So buckle up, I guess, you sleeve enthusiasts. We start Snow White's journey in 1937 with Walt Disney's first feature-length in-color animated film. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs retold the 1812 grim fairy tale of the same name. Now, you hear me talk about the premiere of this film quite often because there are a lot of fun, interesting costumes that appeared at the red carpet, including Mickey, Minnie, Donald Duck, and all seven dwarves. Now, Snow White was nowhere to be found at the red carpet, but they did have a really cool Snow White garden right outside the theater filled with statuettes, including Snow White and the seven dwarves, that I had no idea about until I started researching for this video. It's a fun little detail, including all the giant dwarf heads mounted on the top of a large wall of concept art and promotional materials that also accompanied the premiere. This is very cool. I kind of love this. So even though Snow White's costume wasn't around for the premiere, she was there in spirit in her garden singing with her creatures. America's first peek at a live-action Snow White came as a result of the 1949 Icecapades. That's right, we're going right to the ice early in this video, baby. This was the first ever partnership between Walt Disney and the Icecapades. It was part of a larger show featuring a lot of entertaining figure skater segments, but this was kind of snuck in there as like a branded IP business. This is pretty cool. Snow White joined the stage with all seven dwarves, plus an appearance from the Huntsman, Evil Queen, and even the Prince. She has a unique look in this production, far off from the primary colors we know her for. Instead, we're given a blue and white dress. Now, this is a very different look for Snow White. A lot of the elements are still there. The puff sleeves, the iconic skirt, the tight little fitted bodice, but everything is kind of changed a little bit, accentuated with lacy accents and like some flowing fabrics. It's interesting, it's nice. That thick white lacy frill is a choice, but hey, it's gotta be visible from the ice in big arenas, so I kind of get it. It's a simple enough outfit, but it sells decently enough alongside all seven of those very wacky dwarfs, all right? She looks tame compared to these seven weirdos. Speaking of the Disneyland park, as we all know, in 1955, Walt Disney made an emergency phone call to the Icecapades, realizing he had no costume characters for the ABC broadcast that was about to show the world Disneyland. So they called up and got all the Icecapades costumes and brought them down, including Snow White and her seven dwarfy pals. Now, this is the Snow White from the 1949 production. You can see the thick line of lace, the lacy bodice, the white puffy shoulders, but it was in black and white, so no one really knew that this was not the right color. she just had a slightly different look, and she appeared twice in the broadcast, both in the parade float and then later in the Fantasyland segment. Now they took the short skirt of the Icecapades costume and added like a tulle frilly dress underneath it, because no one needs that short of a skirt on Snow White in the parks for kids to hug. Kids will just be hugging thighs if you have a short skirt like that from the Icecapades. So they were very clever in adding a nice long dress to this look. Ah, yes, 1961, the summer of fun, where we got the big head costumes. Not only did we get big head Seven Dwarf costumes in 1961, we also got an original Snow White look from the park's costume department. And this is great. It's a very simple Snow White, a very basic Snow White. A simple long yellow skirt, a basic blue top with a row of buttons down the middle, and a rather large ruffled collar that feels a little dramatic. It feels like almost a little too big. Like, what is she, like a Count from Transylvania? It's a little strange, but hey, it's yellow, red, and blue like the cartoon, so I can't complain. I really cannot complain. And she's occasionally seen in her cape, which is a nice little addition. Everyone loves a Snow White in a cape, right? A snow cape. Now, next to all the oddly proportioned big head dwarves, she is certainly an interesting silhouette. It's kind of fun, and I think that we started in the parks from a simple, authentic place, and that's good, to go along with all the psychopaths, all these big head psychopaths stopping around her. I think that was a really wise choice. This Snow White was like everywhere. They were on TV specials, because fun fact, an original established canon inside the parks is that Snow White always appears with the Seven Dwarfs. The Seven Dwarfs cannot appear in the parks by themselves unless Snow White is there in some capacity. And only one dwarf, Dopey, is allowed to appear by himself with Snow White, which you have seen in the past. Now, these rules are a lot less strict these days in the modern era of the 2020s. But back in the day, we kind of formed this rule pretty early on that when you saw Snow White, you were seeing the Seven Dwarfs, and you would never see the Seven Dwarfs without snow. Here's where things get fun. Disney began touring arenas in the late 1960s. Not an ice show, I'm talking like a real arena, like performance sort of stunt show thing, where it had lots of wacky Disney bits performed for you live on a basketball court, essentially. But the big final story they told with Disney on Parade was Snow White, and they went hard for this one. And thankfully they televised it once, so we have a nice view of everything that happened. Snow has a similar pattern and design from the 1961 park looks. Like, she looks a lot like the theme park Snow White, but the costume is made thicker and heavier and more robust. Everything here just feels like, stronger. I like the bright, bold blue lines that cut down into the bodice. In all the photos, it really helps it make the dark blue material pop and helps the silhouette quite a bit. I like that the bodice is kind of like a fitted several piece thing that is constructed. And I also really like that they're experimenting with like the ribbons on the puff sleeves, like nice big long ribbons on the puff sleeves here. A look that will return later to the parks. Now, I have the souvenir booklet from this with a bunch of photos from the event, and so it's very cool. It's a fun little thing. I love these dwarves. Look, it's me. I'm on the cover of this right now. Oh my goodness. And I also need to show you this bizarro clip, this unhinged clip of when Disney on Parade went to Wisconsin and Mickey and Snow White were gifted a custom wheel of cheese that looked like Mickey Mouse. This is iconic. This is iconic. What an incredible moment. I wonder if they ate it, if it's still out there somewhere aging. Who knows? What a strange thing to see. A giant wheel of Mickey cheese. Appropriate though, because he's a mouse, he likes cheese. Now, this next one is awesome. As someone who's worked on Broadway, I'm so here for this. Because in 1979, there was a forgotten, full-scale Snow White musical that debuted at Radio City Music Hall. The musical was professionally filmed, which you're looking at right now, and aired on HBO as a cross-promotional tool to promote the live tour that kicked off in New York. It's kind of clever what they did here. And the Snow White in this looks amazing. She just looks amazing. It's great to see her on stage. We play around with those sleeves once again here with like diamond cutouts instead of like traditional like ribbons. And she has a very sharp line that they put down the middle of her top. And she's often wearing her cape, which has that nice little gem on the top. The collar is very short. We didn't go super super big with the collar. So I like that. I like that. This is a very solid Snow White look. And I really like this show, and I guess I really should do a full breakdown of it because it's like a 3-hour Broadway musical that we have a pro shot of, which is rare. And it's insane because it's totally forgotten about. No one thinks about this Snow White musical when they think about Disney on Broadway, and probably for good reasons that it's forgotten, because the dwarves in this are unhinged. They are terrifying with their giant rubber mask face, but I'm sure that you all have seen my evolution of the 7 dwarves video, pretty popular one out there. The rubber faces were horrifying and Dopey was the worst. Dopey was the worst. Let's do a whole video on this. Stay tuned. Now, a new Snow White costume appeared in the parks in the early 80s, 1983 to be exact. Now, Tokyo Disneyland opened its doors in 1983, so perhaps there's a connection there, but I'm not entirely sure. Her 50th anniversary was just a couple years away, and she got like a full parade. Like there was a full Snow White 50th anniversary parade in the parks, but this costume doesn't align with that. That came years after this costume debuted, so I'm not really sure what's working out. So I'm gonna go with Tokyo Disneyland Opening, because they have a Snow White ride and stuff, so, you know, whatever. And now this costume is suspiciously similar to the Disney on Parade costume. Like there's a lot in common here. The sleeves in particular, that we really like those big ribbony sleeves. Now the puff sleeves are long. They're very long. They're probably the biggest cuffed puff sleeves of the Snow White looks that you will see in this video. And they return quite often in this design, kind of tweaked and played around with. But they have long blue ribbons that connect the cuff to the shoulder, and it kind of gives like this prison bar feel, like they're very long ribbons. But I love it. The skirt is very, very simple, no pleats or anything like that. And the top returns to like a multi-piece construction. You can see the several parts of that are sewn together to like make the top blue bodice. And she's seen wearing a cape more frequently in the parks now after this transition. Kind of pulls the whole look together, and that is a tradition that continues with Snow White. She is regularly seen with her cape in the parks, and that works for me story-wise. I kind of like it. You know, it's what Snow White would wear when she's out and about, you know, like scavenging for berries or whatever she does. I don't know. Now this fit stays around in the parks for a while, like quite a while. So keep an eye out for a lot of these super long, elongated, puffy sleeve things to return. When you see them, you'll see them. You'll know. It's like, oh, okay, that was a variant of this costume. They will return, I assure you. Now, back before Disney on Ice, we had a thing called Walt Disney's World on Ice, still produced by Feld Entertainment, the people that make Disney on Ice now, but it was under a different kind of banner. And they gave us an entire show dedicated to Snow White in 1986. Top to bottom, a 2-act ice skating extravaganza, all dedicated to Snow White herself. Now, of course, why wouldn't you? I mean, like, she's an icon. We were slowly approaching 50 years of Snow White here for this tour. I really love it. I even have the souvenir booklet for it. The show begins with Snow White in her simple peasant outfit. It's like pink and white, it's bright, it's cute, with a short little ratty skirt. And like I said, all skirts on ice are always shortened. It's a danger. You can't really skate with a super long skirt. Eventually, she changes over into her traditional Snow White look, which is cute. It's pretty familiar. It's not like anything dramatic or different, but as the grand finale of the show rolls around, we are blessed with a alternative Snow White costume that is covered with, top to bottom, rhinestones. Rhinestones. Rhinestones everywhere. Oh my goodness. I love you, Feld Entertainment. I love you, Feld Costuming Department, for just slapping rhinestones on every single fit that you possibly can for ice. Now, this is great, honestly. I love it. And her Snow White fit, it bizarrely, like, feels more in line with 16th century fashion than it does with, like, the modern animated look. And I dig that. I like it. Very tight sleeves, small collar. It's super fun. Now, the entire show was remounted about 10 years after it was run the first time, which was fun to see. It's entirely the same show, more or less, but it was cool. So you might have seen it in 1986, you might have seen it in 1995. Now, Snow White continues to make regular appearances with Disney on Ice in lots of different medley shows, but more on that in a little bit. Perhaps one of the weirdest points in this evolution is the time that Snow White got the Oscars and the Academy wrapped up in a heavy legal battle with Disney. Does anyone remember this? This is insane. Featuring Rob Lowe. What's Rob Lowe even doing in my Snow White history? Well, apparently the Oscars were in a deep rating slump in the 1980s, and no one really cared about them. Much like today, no one cares about the Oscars. So to change the game, the producer behind such blockbuster musicals as Grease stepped in to make the Oscars something of note, something great, something spectacular, and well, he succeeded in a lot of ways. Now, you might be asking, how did Snow White get wrapped up into all of this? Well, Carr was inspired for his Oscar opening by the campy, long-running San Francisco production called Beach Blanket Babylon, which was a parody of Hollywood. And of all people, Snow White was its star, navigating the pop culture landscape, busting jokes and singing covers of popular songs. And Carr loved this. He thought that this was like the greatest bit to open the Oscars with. So he just brought that Snow White, costume and all, with all of its sequins and its glittery glitziness. It's a really cute costume. I like the Snow White costume a lot. He brought them right to the Oscars and put it center stage. And well, the rest is infamy. Disney was not in on the joke. They did not know that this was happening. And so they sued the Oscars. They sued the Academy. They sued Alan Carr, effectively ruining his career forever. But for one beautiful unofficial moment, we had Snow White and Rob Lowe singing this.
Lead lights keep on burning, cameras keep on turning, rolling, keep the cameras rolling.
Does anyone remember the full-scale 30-minute Snow White spectacular that ran in Disneyland for a couple of years back in 2004? This thing was incredible. Seriously, it has crazy high production value, much higher production value than the Radio City musical that we saw. And the dwarves are far less terrifying in this, like 1,000 times less terrifying than the dwarves in Radio City. Now this is great, because Snow White, she does the traditional story. She starts out in her raggedy clothes. They're patchwork, they're brown. It's a simple dress, has big fluffy white florally kind of shoulders, which I think is neat. It kind of echoes or mimics what costume she will end up in. But it's fun to start. And she occasionally reappears in the parks wearing this outfit. You can find her on Sweetheart Nights and stuff, sometimes wearing this outfit if you want to, meet her and get a cool picture with it. For the second half of the show, she changes into her traditional Snow White look, and wow. Remember I told you about those long prison collar sleeves? Well, they're back, but this time they're covered with gold sequins, shiny gold material. It's incredible. This whole costume is very much plussed up in a theatrical way, and I really love it. The skirt is all tooled out with these little hearts sewn into it, and this collar, boy, oh boy, the collar they put on this Snow White, my gosh, you could serve a pizza on this thing. All in all, this is a really nice Snow White look, and it catches the light beautifully on stage, really is this nice bright look that is highly visible from anywhere that you're sitting in the park. So it's a cute little 30-minute show that it ran regularly in Disneyland for many years and was an absolute fan favorite. And I really love the ensemble of this show. It's got such a fun little critter ensemble, dwarf ensemble, lots of fun characters in this show. Does anyone remember this? I never got to see it, and it makes me sad. This would have been amazing. We could bring this back, put it in the Hyperion right now, to go in line with the new movie. Bingo, bango, boombo. It is now that I must bring you to the montage segment of the Snow White costume history, because she has many, many looks as the theme parks entered their eras of parades, stage shows, castle shows, nighttime extravaganzas, holiday parties. Costumers really took Snow White and ran with her to make many different variations of her rather traditional costume. So I've segmented them into 3 robust montages, starting with what I like to call the Glow Snow, which is of course a journey through her nighttime spectacular costumes, starting with my favorite. Honestly, my favorite Glow Snow look comes from Spectro Magic. She is fully outfitted here. A glowing hair bow, glowing sleeves, glowing top. I have to imagine the costume probably got pretty hot because you're just strapped with color-changing Christmas lights. Next, of course, we have the Electric Main Street Parade, where Snow White has had a pretty iconic run. But my favorite part about this costume is Snow White's glow collar, like an illuminated tall collar to kind of always keep her face visible for guests. Of course, then we have the Tokyo Electric Parade, aka Dream Lights. They gave her a look that I'm calling, hey, some fireflies got stuck in my skirt. Of course, Snow White infamously appears in the nighttime spectacular Fantasmic. Her old Disneyland look was a basic Snow White with some rhinestone accents, but after 2009, she got an entire new look covered in sequins. It's shiny Snow White, shiny, shiny. She's dripping in sequins here. Meanwhile, over at Walt Disney World, Snow White and her prince kind of have like an interesting plaid look going on. There's lots of plaid. I don't know what to tell you. Fantasmic at Disney World is weird. At Disneyland, it's awesome. Fantalusion, you know that Disneyland Paris parade, Fantalusion? She got stuck in a highly reflective kind of copy of her dress that she was wearing in the parks. They just kind of remade it in highly reflective material. One of the weirder ones. She's got like a disco ball skirt, like they cover her skirt in little reflective mirrors. And finally, perhaps one of the weirder ones on the nighttime parade spectacular was Enchanted Adventures, the parade for the Pirates and Princess party night, you know, that party night that predates Mickey's Most Merriest and Not So Scary. Snow White and the prince are there in a Central Park horse and buggy setup, and they're surrounded by gems and Christmas lights. She's not glowing, but her cart is, and she's wearing a crown. It's cute. I like it. Does it count for the list? I think this counts for the glow list. I'm putting it here. Now from Glow Snow montage, we move on to the show Snow. And that, of course, is her theme park medley stage show appearances, because she's been in quite a few. I want to start with one of my favorite Disney park stage shows, One Man's Dream 2. Everyone who appears in this musical has at least 2, maybe 3 different fits that they wear. We start off with a Snow White that's very traditional look. Then we go into like this like maiden Snow White, this like simplified Snow White for like this dreamy princess dance sequence. And then finally, of course, there's a big finale where everyone comes out in white and gold top to bottom. It's just like a giant wedding, which a lot of these costumes end up feeling like wedding dresses, bizarrely. We've got the Dream Along Castle show from Walt Disney World. Everyone remember that? It's where we first got animatronic talking character heads at Disney World. Now, Snow White has a cameo in the show in a variant costume, which is much richer than her normal meet and greet costume. Has like a richer fabric texture, and it's a really royal looking fit. This might be the best looking Snow White on the whole list. I know I've said that before, but I changed my mind. This is it. This is now my favorite one. This is a beautiful Snow White costume. Then of course we have Mickey's Most Merriest Celebration, which takes a variant from the Dream Along costume and dolls it up with a little bit of Christmas joy, you know, a little holly here. It's fun. I like it. It's a Christmas show. It's the one party that I don't go to. It's the one party that I just don't need to go to the Christmas party. I've done it once and that was enough, you know? The Golden Fairy Tale Fanfare from Shanghai Disney is just one of the best shows ever. And the alternate princess costumes they bring out for this show are unlike anything you have ever seen. Look at all the texture they have here, the detail. It's like they brought her outfit to life, like in a completely new and different way. There's lots of varieties of Princess Waltz, but the Starlet one is probably one of my favorite. It's really cool. It's like Bridgerton Snow White in a weird way. It's all like dolled up with like pearls and little like apple textures like hidden into her skirt. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the video, Snow White is still making appearances regularly with Disney on Ice with a nice little modified fit. It's a relatively short yellow skirt compared to her normal like ankle length skirt, but like we said, we need that. That's for safety. And it looks gorgeous. She just looks like the traditional Snow White. I love it. It's way cooler than the 1949 version they originally had on Ice, I'll tell you that much. Now lastly, for my montage of montages, I have to of course bring you to one of my favorite parts of the parks, parades, in a segment I'm calling Snow on a Float. Happiness is Here is a really fun parade. I highly recommend everyone take a look at it. And I love the Snow White variation here, specifically the skirt. It's the skirt where the business gets done here, with a lot of swirly, quirly, little swirly cute embroideries. Soundsational is just one of the best parades ever. It's just one of the goats. A sunny daytime parade that makes a couple little tiny changes to the traditional Snow White look. Nothing big, but just notably the fabric. They essentially rebuilt the dress in new fabric that is brighter and more reflective. Once Upon a Dream is a great parade. And this is where we start to cross over again into that like wedding gown territory. The frilliness of the skirt might be a little too much for me. All the butterflies and such, the ornate puff sleeves with rhinestones and embroidery. Where are we going with the Snow White? You know, even the cape is rhinestoned, all right? Like, who does she think she is, Disco Stew?
Hey, Disco Stew doesn't advertise.
Wow, what a princess float from this parade. And we are really heading in that direction of like the fantasy princess wedding. The diamond imprints on her skirt, the regal upgrade to all the gold embroidery of the top. Why does this feel like a Snow White Final Fantasy character? There's no way to deny that this Hong Kong winter parade show just took all of the princes and princesses, put them in white outfits that made them just all look like they were either about to be baptized or get married. This is a Snow White look, if you will. Another fun event that Disneyland Paris had was the Pirates vs. Princess Party. It was this cool parade that like kind of started in two places and collided into like a fun a character show. And all of the princesses had unique piratey kind of outfits designed for them. The giant red flowers that are sewn into her skirt and her new top with like that bright yellow bit of laced up design. This is a fun one. This is a really, really fun one. All of these parade float princess costumes are like very cool. Snow White got a fancy makeover in 2014, which is now the new modern Snow White design that we're all familiar with. Now, I'm not exactly sure why this character design kicked off in the parks. I have a guess that the Festival of Fantasy Parade might have played a part in it because she's in that parade. That parade came out in 2014, but this look is a really, really nice, fully refined, really like cartoon accurate Snow White. The bodice now has these 3 gold lines that run up and down into a thick red velvet cape that's wrapped around Snow White's collar. The puff sleeves are shorter, and the bold red under that royal blue is just chef's kiss. The skirt is simplified. It's a little pleated, but not much. It's not very busy. It's a little basic. And all in all, the primary colors put together really make for a very, very cool Snow White. And I love the refined, collar that they did. Everything here is just excellent. It's just really, really good costume storytelling. And this is the modern Snow White that we now have in the parks everywhere. When you see a Snow White out there somewhere, it is this outfit. I love the Snow White. I love meeting her over in Epcot where she's making pies all the time. The cast members are like, oh, Snow White's gotta go, she's baking pies. I love the stupid things that character leads say. Now, recently in 2024, Disneyland Paris kind of went a little hog wild with Snow White and got some crazy ornate princess variants for her. We start with a Disney Royal Encounter, which is a princess-themed character dining experience at the Disneyland Paris Hotel. It's very regal, it's very fancy, it's like Cinderella dining a little bit, or like the Royal Ascot Hall in Epcot. It's a Disney princess-themed thing, but in a very fancy location. And I like these fun hotel variations, because they go fancy over there in Europe pretty hard. And she is European royalty after all, so it totally makes sense for me. It does feel like a dress that she would wear when like going to visit Belle, for like a ball or something like that. It's fun. It's textured fabric with a modified like 3-piece bodice bottom that like evolves into a darker blue top, and the shiny tulle layered into the skirt gives it this nice majestic sparkle. It's great. It's great. And now weirdly, there's another Princess Snow White fancy variant in Paris, but this time it's for like this like hyper ornate like royal like party that they had. I'm not sure. The Royal Ball is what it's called. They did like a little lobby presentation for media, and like just look at this hyper ornate look. My gosh, this might be too fancy. This might be going overboard in a way that like starts to detract from the character a little bit. Like yikes. This is like, it's like Hunger Games Snow White. It's like, where'd you get so fancy, Snow? I don't know. Why is Paris sitting on all these fancy? Because she's European royalty, like I said. Let her be. Let her have these fancy shows for her royal balls and her royal encounters. I need to go to Paris. I need to go to Paris and check this out because this looks cool. I like this a lot. Now in 2025, we have a live action reboot of Snow White. Cool, it features Rachel Zegler. I dig her, she's great. And Gal Gadot is the evil queen, neat. It sort of brings us full circle back to the 16th century fashion we talked about in the beginning of the episode, in that this is a very traditional Snow White. This is a very 16th century inspired Snow White. We have a modified puff sleeve with the cuff kind of tucked up into the sleeve to kind of make it like bulb over, and the collar is very short. It's a very short collar that opens up down into her chest and is kind of a part of the bodice and not a separate thing that like kind of like attaches in. I like it now. I like the puff sleeve overhang. I like the collar, and got like a little bit of a laced up front and a nice texture for the fabric of the skirt. This is nice. This is nice. The hairstyle on Rachel Zegler doesn't do anything for me. Like the Snow White look on Rachel, I love you, Rachel. I adore you, but this wig or whatever, this style just doesn't, you know, I don't know. I am excited to see this represented in the parks though. With a lot of the live action adaptations that we've had of late, like Little Mermaid, for example, we've had a presence in the park with the new versions of the characters. And so I'm excited to see how live action Snow White ends up in the parks. It's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be something, you know, it's not gonna look anything like Rachel Zegler, but this isn't the time for me to bemoan and complain about live face characters. I'm interested to see what they do with this and like we might get like a fun new meet and greet space, you know, like who knows? There's lots to play around with here, so I'm excited. So there you go, Snow White fans. Let me know in the comments below if you had a chance to meet any of these Snow Whites, or if there was a Snow White costume that I missed, because there were a lot of them. Over 30 of them on this list. Wow. That's a lot of different Snow White looks. Now, I know I didn't necessarily go into her ride history. She's had a ride, she's got a roller coaster, she was in the Mickey Mouse review, she's had animatronics, but the focus here was the costumes, because this was a really robust Disney princess, the first Disney princess, and she's been around the longest. And so I needed to really dive deep into all the different ways that we've presented her in the park without really focusing on, you know, robots and stuff like that. So let me know, again, what your favorite Snow White costume was, how you got to meet Snow White. Maybe let me know what your favorite dwarf is. I'm a dopey guy. You know, you can't beat dopey. I'm a dope. I am also dopey myself, you know, so I get it. Thanks so much to my patrons who support this channel. You can head on over to patreon.com/DisneyDan and check out early views of my videos, behind the scene clips, hang out with me in my Discord, ask me questions, all that fun stuff. And of course, don't forget my podcast, Fun, where there are lots of fun theme park chats with all different kinds of theme park weirdos, much like myself. Thanks so much for watching, guys. As always, you rock. Hi ho, hi ho. It's the end of the video. Do 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 do. Hi ho, hi ho, hi ho.